for you as well. Here's a couple of college football quarterback notes. Utah hosting UCLA. I think they were a 4.5-point favorite. There we are with Brett McMurphy. Now 6 points. Cam Rising appears he'll return for the game against UCLA. Kyle Whittingham said that he was full participant in practice last week with no contact. Rising hasn't played, of course, since the ACL injury in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, that changes a lot. I mean, it changed my pick for sure this week when I made it, just because if he's going to play, I think it's going to be different. And I might have more trust in Kyle Whittingham than maybe he deserves, but I think that this was the plan all along, to roll out Cam Rising against UCLA as the conference season started. By far the best offense they've played, so they certainly need him. Even if he's 90%, that's better than what they have behind him.
Do I get to change my pick now that we know this news as well?
We haven't made him yet. I can go over there and do it.
No, technically you guys can change it.
I think it would be fair if we could,
I
but I don't
picked Utah straight up before this, but that makes me even feel better.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely played into my decision, but, I'll decide. I might just hang with UCLA because, I don't know, I still feel good about them. But, that's great news for Utah. To their credit, they were able to manage the non-conference and get through that using a couple different quarterbacks. Obviously, their depth got shattered. Rising is a huge part of their identity, and to not have him and to be entering the conference as 3-0 team, I think it just speaks to the strength of the program and what Kyle Whittingham has done there, and just how talented they are, and their ability to overcome your starting quarterback missing time. I don't care who you're playing along the way. So yeah, they're a ferocious team that's going to be a great addition to the Big 12. They got an incredibly impactful game coming up this weekend against Chip Kelly and the Bruins that I'm very much looking forward to seeing how that shakes out, and even more so now that Cam Rising's back. I think it's good to have your best players playing in college football. Mm-hmm. So he's been missing, and now Utah's more of full strength or closer to full strength, and I think that's good for obviously them and good for the Pac-12's the best conference in America talks, and also I think just good for the college football fans. So, yeah, great to see him coming back.
Well, Utah was able to survive their game in Waco, but they won. Johnson came in at the end, and, of course, a couple of picks from Sawyer Robertson and won the game. And so now they've been able to get through the early part of it, which was kind of always the thought maybe he would be out for 2 or 3 or 4 games, but just in time for Pac-12 play. The 2-time defending champions will have their quarterback and their heart and soul in Cam Rising back. And then Nick Saban, we know that Alabama's going back to Jalen Milroe. And today with Pat McAfee saying that, what did he say to Jalen Milroe? He has nothing to prove. He's our guy. Now, he started that game with Texas. There were some good moments, but there were also some very erratic moments and, of course, a couple of deadly picks. And it just didn't seem right. So they went to Buckner. It damn sure didn't seem right. They really struggled with that. And so they have to make up their mind that this could be just a big problem. I don't know. Do you think that and he, of course, apparently didn't react well during practices last week, and he was better on game day. But do you think that with now what they saw against Texas, what they saw with USF, why would they not have a package of almost a wildcat? That doesn't mean he can't throw it, but like a wildcat loaded up and try to pound people with Jalen Milroe more often as a runner.
I think that's what they have to do, and that's what can keep teams off balance. And I know that you want to protect your quarterback in the run game, but you know whose offense would make sense for Jalen Milroe right now? It's Tom Herman's. Absolutely would.
Yeah, he loves running the quarterback.
He loves running the quarterback. They might need, Tommy Rees might need to pull a page from that playbook and say, all right, look, this is how you run the quarterback. This is how you run the running game through the quarterback and do that, because that's what Jalen Milroe's strength is. And I get not wanting to create bad habits with him, but if you're Alabama, your goal is to be in the national championship picture, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you lose one more game, you're not as far out of that as everybody else who has 2 games, but this early in the season, you're reasonably out of it.
We're pretty much done
you're
with 2
losses.
I mean, like in a 14 playoff, that's.
I mean, they almost conned their way in there last year.
I know, but that's 2 in the first month.
Exactly. So you're pretty much out of it.
Yeah, and the luster is there with them, but it's not there when you get smoked at home and get beat up at home. And they did by Texas, despite the fact they led into the fourth quarter or led at one point 16-13. That's not – people are smart enough to realize that's why they're number 12 now. in the country because it's not the same Alabama. Texas proved that, and also even almost USF proved it as well.
I mean, yeah, USF nearly knocked them off, nearly handed them that second loss before anybody expected it. I think Saban's obviously playing some games, not like evil sense, but he's moving the chess pieces around the board and kind of dictating them in a way that I think is going to lead to ultimately what he wants in the end. And I think if you listen to the McAfee interview, which I didn't listen in its entirety, but I saw a little bit from it, he talked about Michael Jordan getting benched when he was a high school player and how that motivated and drove him. And, some people could lash out and turn that into, all sorts of different reactions, but Michael Jordan used it as fuel and motivator to the point where he was way too obsessed during his career and still is with what people said about him. But it did, it was what drove him, and failure drove him. And so Saban's basically saying that he sees that sort of fight and drive from Milroe as opposed to like maybe the bad attitude that he had a week ago, and that's a sign that he's making progress and showing the things that he needs to show. So he's now looking at it as a motivator, what's happened, and that Jalen Milroe will be better because of it. We'll see. Again, watching that Texas game, beautiful deep ball, that was great, but that was just a confounding game plan, and a lot of that had to do with what Texas did. But it was such a weird feast or famine type of an offense that I'm very curious of what they do differently, Tommy Rees and company, to make it make sense and make it look like it's a Jalen Milroe offense and not like just randomly pressing buttons on the controller or just hitting the deep ball button over and over again, because that's what it was like against Texas at times. So, yeah, a very interesting sequence of events here with the QB issue that you knew could be an issue going in, and it's Milroe's team now, so let's see what he can do with it.
And I'm not suggesting that Milroe is just a runner because he's got the big body or whatever, but we've seen what he's done, and it's a little bit iffy. And I don't think it's that he doesn't know how to read a defense. I don't think it's anything about, and a lot of it might be receivers making plays. But last year, he did run for 263 yards in some partial time, had a 77-yard run. He's capable of that.
He beat A&M last year. He was the starting quarterback when they played and won that game. He's and look, I know A&M was 5-7, but that was a game that maybe they could have pounced on Alabama and it was close, but they didn't get it done, and Jalen Milroe did what he had to do to win that game. I think, it's not that he's not a good passer. Well, it's not that he can't be a good passer. He's not a good passer today. That doesn't mean he's not going to be one, but today there are throws that he does not make very well.
No.
So as it stands today, you have to work around that. Now, there are coaches who are stubborn, stuck in the mud when it comes to calling their offense and what they're going to do. Actually, one of those was Tom Herman. I mentioned, I think that's what kind of undid him, among other things, at Texas, that he never really, used all the talent that he had and kind of ran everything through Sam Ehlinger, and that kind of created a problem in certain games. But you do have to, be flexible and say, okay, look, if Jalen Milroe can't make these throws, then we're not going to call them that much unless we have to, and we're going to try to dare the defense into leaving those throws wide open. That way he can make them, or we're just going to run things that are going to be successful. Maybe they go back to maybe some more ball control for a little while, let him be the playmaker running the ball, get those running backs involved a little bit more and see if they can get something out of them, but because that's what they're going to have to do. And I think Nick Saban's one who's not going to sit around and go, okay, well, we had planned to do this, so we're going to do this no matter what because I know it can happen. I think he'll be, okay, what do we have to do to make this work and avoid doing the things that are going to put him in a position to make mistakes?
They've had another week. They know what he can or cannot do. They tried the other options. That absolutely didn't work. And even against Texas, losing 34-24, Milroe made some plays. Sometimes when he had to be impromptu, had to be kind of like make things up a little bit. But he can obviously, but making the 15-yard or whatever out in timing, that seems to be an issue right now. And by the way, his offensive line gave up 5 sacks, even for a guy that can run around the way he can.
Yeah, I think we need to chill out and making it sound like some final determination has been made on this guy. He's barely been a starting quarterback, and yeah, there's some things that didn't look great, especially against Texas. But let's look. He's a starter now. Let's watch him play. We don't need a full-on breakdown of what he can't. Let him play. Let's see what Tommy Rees can do. Nick Saban's the greatest of all time. So, if anybody's going to be able to find ways to make Jalen Milroe the best player he can be, I think, between the player and the coaches, they should be able to do that. Will it be enough to live up to Alabama's, every year 10 wins or more. Maybe not. Maybe this is the year where that slides and they're 9-3 or something. I know that would be the apocalypse, but damn, let the guy breathe a little bit and let him play some more.
So we can. Saban said what he said.
So let's let him play a little bit before we, break him down to the nth degree here.
All right, I just sent you something, Garrett, when you can. It's another quarterback story involving Kansas State and Will Howard. We will have our predictions on the Big 12. I saw some of you in the chat room have already predicted games that you are more interested in, and you can do that. We'll be looking at what you're saying, too, and we'll put up our board here at the bottom of the hour. It's 3:18, and this is 365 Sports. So Kansas State, Will Howard, lost at Missouri. He really was immobile. There were times they brought in the backup to kind of run the ball a little bit, to kind of move the ball just a little bit. He suffered an ankle injury, and he is someone that can help you with what he can be mobile. Colin Klein, the offensive coordinator, saying he's day-to-day. Sounds like it will be a game-time decision. I think they're being honest here with UCF going up next. Avery Johnson, who did well running the ball, he's a problem there. And Rubley will also be ready to play if Howard can't play or can't play every down.
Yeah, Avery Johnson's an interesting player. I can't wait to see more of him, in the future at Kansas State. But right now, if I'm a Kansas State fan or just a passionate observer of college football, I want to see Will Howard as much as I can because he's played so well for them. Game time decision is always you never want to hear that because I'd rather just know he's going to be out, than he's going to be a game time decision. You can, have those Willis Reed type moments.
Well, there's still 48 hours. I don't know when they play.
Yeah, they can gut it out, but you're going to be, he can't, any time that, somebody even gets close to his leg, you're going to be, clutching your pearls because it's going to be nerve-wracking for Kansas State fans.
Well, I think they're just, trying to take it to the last degree and see, 2 days from now if he's any better. And that's understandable. They don't have to make a decision on Thursday afternoon. So, I don't think it sounds great. You'd love for them to be able to just go ahead and say, hey, he's ready. But then again, if he was, would they say that? No, they probably wouldn't, would they? They'd want to let UCF sit there and have to sweat it a little bit. So I'm sure, they're preparing for Avery Johnson. They're preparing for every possibility. Avery Johnson's, the exciting freshman. So with guys like that, there's always a bit of a buzz about what they can do, but there's also, some growing pains that can come attached, and especially when you compare it to what Will Howard and what we know he can already do, that's a big loss no matter what. So yeah, that's the huge question mark entering this game. Hopefully Will Howard can play because again, you want everybody at their best in these types of games. If you're a UCF fan, you're like, I'm sure you'd like to say, just beat up K-State head up. But, hey, if you get Avery Johnson, that's not a bad deal in your first trip to Manhattan. So, yeah, that's an important storyline that I guess we'll figure out, on Saturday. But he was clearly hobbled and not at 100%. And if he can't run the football, he's not quite as dangerous as he is otherwise. And so it's like with Sawyer Robertson, except for Sawyer's not nearly the passer that Will Howard is at this point. But if you take away the run game, it's not quite, as dangerous for the opponent. So, that's a major story to keep an eye on.
Well, here's also another note. They don't play till 7 Saturday night against UCF. They're at home in Manhattan. So there's no trip to deal with. So you have 48 hours. You have actually more than that. You never know how much treatment, whatever it is, heat, ice, whatever they can do. At the TENS machine, whatever they can to try to see if they can get him more mobile. Now, we